All right, it is another Facebook Friday, a Facebook Live Friday edition. We've got football, basketball, you name it, we've got it. Lee K. Howard, Brian Milam. What a week of drama and build-up.
It's been a little busy, hasn't it?
A little bit,
bit busy. There's a few things going on campus to talk about, and it all gets started tonight, and then, of course, the big football game tomorrow.
Oh, my gosh. What the Wildcats did against Missouri in the final drive is the epitome of a 2-minute drill, only they did it in a minute 14. So They had Terry Wilson was at his best then, no doubt about it.
Yeah, he was really good in that 2-minute with the exception of taking that sack. Wilson guided the Wildcats to a potential championship-saving drive. Wilson, of course, said that he loves playing that kind of speed.
I feel more comfortable when we're up-tempo. Once we get the ball thrown and, we're completion after completion, you just start to get in a roll. And, we practice it all the time. And, a lot of the coaches say, I perform my best when we're up-tempo and stuff like that. So I like it when we go 2-minute, and, it's fun.
It was a lot of fun watching the Cats do what they did against Missouri in the final minute 14.
And I have to confess, I was at a trick-or-treat event with my kids at the end of that game.
Nice
so I was
job.
driving in the car back, listening to Tom Leach and Jeff Pecora, listening as I'm driving down Man of War. And, unbelievable. I got to see it later. I, of course, went back and watched it, but just listening to it, the drama. I can't imagine being in the stadium there in Columbia, Missouri, watching that. That was the Wildcats at their best when they had to be at their best. After their offense was just, let's just say it was terrible for the entire game, all the way up into that very last drive, and they came through with the drive they had to have.
Well, think about the steps that everything had to fall in place. If Kentucky doesn't get the punt return from Lynn Bowden, you don't have to worry about the C.J. Conrad touchdown. If Missouri doesn't throw the football on 3rd and 2 in their last drive, if they run it, Kentucky is forced to call its final timeout. When Terry Wilson is sacked with 9 seconds, whatever, Kentucky was able to call timeout, right the ship. Missouri played prevent defense on the final drive. It cost them.
Not a good idea.
Everything fell into place for Kentucky when it needed to, and Lynn Bowden's punt return seemed to ignite everybody.
And that's why everybody looks at this team and says, this is a team of destiny. Now, I don't know that this team's going to go on and win the national championship, but the fact that they're to this point 7-1 with a chance tomorrow to win the SEC East is just an unbelievable thing. And this is not what happens to Kentucky football, where they catch the breaks, they get the calls at the end of the game, and they catch a game-winning touchdown with no time on the clock. So this is special right now for Kentucky football fans.
Is this what Alabama and Florida and LSU, these guys do all the time,
This is what they expect, but this is not something that Kentucky fans have come to expect.
No, Kentucky and Georgia, as you mentioned, for the SEC East title Saturday afternoon and into the evening. And right now, the Bulldogs, as expected, continue to be a solid 9.5 to 10-point favorite over the Cats.
Yeah, but could it be a little bit closer than that when you consider they're playing here at Commonwealth Stadium or Kroger Field? The last time Georgia came to Lexington, the Bulldogs, of course, won on that walk-off field goal by the infamous Rodrigo, who's now become a famous field goal kicker at Georgia. 27-24 was the score there. Over the last 3 years, UK's 11-5 in games decided by a touchdown or less. And like we were just talking about, the Cats have somehow found a way to win those close games. And I believe we got C.J. Conrad talking about that.
Yeah, C.J.'s coming up.
That comes with guys being older, more mature, and the leadership on this team. We've been there, we've been on the other side of things, and just learning from all those experiences. And we were freshmen and sophomores when we were not winning games, and now we're juniors and seniors, and we're learning how to win these.
It's more intense. We playing for something big this week, something that we haven't done in a while here. So it's big for us. It's big for us. But we're more relaxed. We're not uptight, not loosey-goosey either. But we're just focused, laser focused.
Laser focused. We're taking your questions and comments on Facebook Live as we get you ready for the Cats and the Dogs tomorrow, and we'll get to basketball in a moment, but first it's football.
Okay, a couple of questions here. Branson asked, and we'll get to this one later, Branson, what's your score take? I'm assuming he means on the football game tomorrow. We'll choose that in a second. John says, can UK potentially become amongst the top 4 of the college football playoffs?
That happens with wins.
That happens with wins.
That's the easy. One loss here and you're done.
Yeah, one loss and you're out of the conversation completely of the college football playoffs. But the good thing is Kentucky is one of the few teams that at this point can control their own destiny and potentially end up in the top 4 of the college football playoffs, which sounds absolutely insane and crazy to say, but all they have to do is win out. That's not easy, but yes, they can potentially end up in the top 4. When was the last time UK was in the top 5 SEC teams? Linda.
Of the top 5 SEC teams. Well, if we go back to 2007, when Rich Brooks, Kentucky got into the top 10 of America.
Yes.
They beat Arkansas. They beat everybody. And then that second half of the year really tailed off a little bit. The second half of the season is when Kentucky has really struggled over the decades. And for whatever the reason, the competition does pick up a little bit. Obviously, you see Georgia and you see Tennessee and teams like that. But I'll go back to 2007. That was the last time Kentucky was in the top 10 of America.
Okay, a couple other questions. Brad says, can the Cats control the line of scrimmage on offense and allow Benny Snell to do Benny things, just managing time of possessions?
Here's one thing I think Georgia's going to do on defense. And this is, if you're Georgia, Terry Wilson has struggled. Mm-hmm. He runs the football. He struggled throwing it. I'm selling out on the run.
I think most defenses will. You have to, and that's what we've seen against A&M. That's what we've seen against Missouri. But you just hope that at home the offensive line does show up and plays like what they were early in the year, and Benny's able to bust open some of those big holes. I mean, Georgia's defense is good, but Kentucky's offense
is a lot better.
Yeah, but Kentucky's is a lot better, and Benny Snell faces that defense every day in practice. Jennifer says, where do you see the 2019 class ranked now that Wan'Dale Robinson is committed to the Cats? That's a good question, Jennifer. We're going to talk about Wan'Dale coming up in just a minute. So that's all the questions for just right now. I'm sure some of you else, we have a few more, but we'll get to those in just a few minutes.
All right, we get creative sometimes.
Okay.
We get to think back. I love YouTube. I'm a history guy. I'm the old school guy between the two of us.
YouTube should send you some checks. You're on YouTube more than anybody I know.
The movie Rudy, one of everybody's favorites when it comes to football. And if you remember the scene in the tunnel, guy grabs his face mask, captain says, "Are you ready?" Champ, he says, "I've been ready for this my whole life." That has got to be the way Kentucky's feeling coming into this game tomorrow.
Yeah, and it also has to be the emotion that the Wildcats, who hail from the Commonwealth, who come from this state, that's got to be the emotion that they're dealing with this week as well. Now, UK has not been anywhere close to the SEC division or an outright title in ages, and they've seen great moments, but now it's time to write their own chapter.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's awesome to witness like those games growing up and everything, and those LSU and Louisville. I was there for that. I was in that stadium. Now to be a part of a big game like that, it's pretty cool.
It's huge for us. It's the biggest game of our lives. We've been working hard all off season through training camp and the whole season to get up to this point and to move and to keep the momentum going through this game and after the game. So we're just treating it like another game, but obviously we all know the magnitude of it.
The magnitude is right. Now, before kickoff, we've been touting this all week. Before kickoff at 3:30 on KYT, we've got a Wildcat warm-up. You will see Lee K. Howard and myself again on the Wildcat warm-up at 2 o'clock. We will be live at the stadium with the stadium in the background. That's on WKYT. Kickoff of the Cats and the Dogs comes at around 3:37, 3:39, something like that.
Now, there were some. There was a little bit of bad news this week in practice. Not terrible news, just bad. More injury news for the Wildcats. Senior linebacker Jordan Jones breaking his right hand earlier this week in practice. Now, Jones is going to play against Georgia on Saturday, but much like Cash Daniel, he's going to wear his padded club. So Mark Stoops calling Jones and Daniel the Q-tip boys. How about that?
Well, Cash is going to be on the left. Jones is going to be on the right. I mean, you talk about whack-a-mole all day. These guys, they would just be punching it.
I think that's like a new thing for Kentucky. The guys. I mean, think about if they win tomorrow and they go to the. That might be. That might
all right,
be the
fans.
thing.
I've got it. You want to dress up for Halloween quickly as a UK player tomorrow when everybody wrap your hand in like toilet paper, hold it up, the whole place swinging clubs. You heard it here first.
Couple other questions here. Jordan asked, who do you think will win? Again, we'll get to that in just a second.
Somebody's got Vegas money here.
Yeah,
you know
John,
what I mean?
John asked, do you think Kentucky needs to play that up-tempo? Terry seems to play better that way.
I agree with that.
I think so. And part of that last drive that you got to keep in mind is the prevent defense that Missouri was playing with. They were giving Terry those underneath routes that he could dump it off to David Bouvier or Lynn Bowden and get those 10 to 15-yard chunk plays. He's not going to see that all game. In fact, he's going to see the loaded box.
Yeah.
But sometimes quarterbacks, and Terry might be one of those, you can still play an up-tempo type offense. And I think Terry's one of those quarterbacks that maybe gets in a rhythm when he doesn't have to necessarily think so much. So I could see Eddie Grand, not the whole game, but at certain points, speeding it up. You also got to remember, Mark Stoops doesn't necessarily like that.
Yeah.
When he first got here with Neil Brown, they tried to play that up-tempo type of thing and offense, and the thing that Mark Stoops hated was how often his defense was on the field, because the downside of playing the up-tempo type of offense is the 3 and out is really, really quick. If you don't convert, your defense is right back on the field. So Stoops won't allow him to play that the whole time, but you could see it some on Saturday.
Yeah, and I've always said, I thought when Stoops got here, UK football had an identity crisis on offense. What do you want to be? You want to throw it around 50 times a game? Well, that's fun and entertaining. But how many teams, let's go through the history of football, especially since, let's go the last 30 years when throwing the football really became the in thing. How many of those teams really win championships? Yeah, Steve Spurrier won. Okay, you can throw him in there. BYU, well, a long time ago, they did win
it's been a
one.
while.
But over the last 30 some odd years, teams that throw it, Oklahoma did it in 2000, but they don't throw it 50, 60 times a game. And the air raid offense, I thought, yeah, it's novel, it's cute, it's entertaining, but at the end of the day, the entertainment value is going to wane. You want to win, so you have to run the football. Mark Stoops was born in Big Ten country. He played in the Big Ten. He is playing Big Ten football in the SEC. Defense
and
first.
He's got the running back.
Game.
Yeah.
The running game. This is what Kentucky shows you. They can compete with the other teams in recruiting, getting players to fit this type of system.
That's a really good point, too, because I was one guilty of saying years ago that Kentucky was one of those schools that almost had to be a little bit gimmicky and had to do something just a little bit different to compete with the big boys, because they were never going to get the elite recruits and be as big or as deep as, and a lot of people said that, but I was guilty as well. But now Mark Stoops has shown 6 years in that that's not correct, that he can compete and get those top recruits, and they can play big boy football right up against the big boys essentially in the SEC and put themselves in positions to win a championship. All right, so a couple other questions here. Where did that go? Somebody asked, Jeremy, who's already predicted a win, says, what do you think will happen after we win tomorrow?
If 250,000 people in the state of Kentucky can send $1 to the University of Kentucky to pay the fine, I think we all
There
can
will
do
be
that.
fine. Everybody's rushing the field.
Yeah,
Donald,
deal with it.
This isn't a question. Donald says players should not play scared, as this is their house. Vaughn asked, if Kentucky wins out the rest of the year, including the SEC championship, do they automatically get a spot in the national championship?
They have to be in
not in the championship,
in
but
the playoff.
Yeah,
they have to be.
Traditionally, since the college football playoff has been around the last however many years, 5, 6 years, the SEC champion has always made it. So, yeah, if Kentucky were to beat Alabama, yes, they're in, and possibly Alabama's in as well.
If you beat Georgia, you beat Alabama in a 1 month span, and then you have to be the Final Four. And just because it's Kentucky's name, I think they would be the fourth team.
Oh yeah,
because any team can lose at some point during the season, but the later in the season you lose, it seems to be more detrimental, certainly. And if Alabama was to lose, like they did a couple of years ago, they didn't even win the Western Division. But guess who was in the Final Four?
Yeah, Alabama.
Just saying.
Yeah.
All right. We talked about recruits, how Mark Stoops has developed this program. Recruiting was huge this week because Western Hills High School was the place to be for that guy. He lucked out, sort of, when Wandale Robinson told the country where he was going to college. Wandale, as you know now, is coming to the Cats.
That's right. Yeah, and he says his decision was really up in the air until the last few days. Nebraska came in second over the likes of Alabama and Big Ten powers, Michigan and Ohio State. Wandale's decision isn't just about football, though, but even life after he takes off the helmet and pads for the final time.
Really, I guess just seeing the progress that they made and knowing that there's a really big impact outside of football that you can make just from going to play at Kentucky. I mean, it's kind of like a 4 for 40 thing. Really, if you go in and do what you're supposed to do, it's kind of like after football, you're not really ever going to want for anything if you were to stay at Kentucky and want to live your life here. So.
I want to explain something. I've had several people say, what did he mean that 4 for 40 thing?
Yeah.
You spend 4 years here, you do the right things, you meet the right people. That 4 years can mean the next 40 years of your life. That's what that 4 for 40 means. You do what you have to do. And we've seen it. I mean, golly, Jack Goose Gibbons. He was the MVP of the 78 Final Four. We still see him all over the place 40 years later.
Still a part of the program.
And he's still a huge part of the program. And a lot of other players are as well.
Wandale at his press conference after he made his decision actually credited Freddie Maggard as the very first person who ever told him that he would play in the SEC. He said he told him somewhere during his sophomore year when Freddie was still working for the media.
Yeah.
He went over to Western Hills High School to do a speech about, playing football, I guess it was, and he told Wandale Robinson that he had the talent to play in the SEC. That stuck with him, and now guess what? Freddie's on campus in a role trying to develop those guys that are currently there to turn into guys in the community and to have that sort of 40 for 40.
Yeah, 4 for 40, yeah.
4 for 40 lifestyle and really kind of incorporate the alumni within the program. And I think that's a big draw to a lot of these recruits as well.
Another guy, Ryan Timmons, who was at Franklin County, again in the state capital where Wandale is. Wandale said he was huge with his recruitment, telling him what to do, what to look for. So when you have mentors that can show you some things, especially from your own hometown, that means a great deal. Ryan Timmons came to Kentucky, and I see a lot of Wandale and Ryan Timmons in their speed, their footwork, their explosiveness when they get into the open field, very similar in style to the way they each run, because they both were just like a deer. They could just take off.
All right, so do we make a prediction now? Football prediction for tomorrow?
I'm going to go 12 years ago, 13 years ago, when Rich Brooks needed to beat Georgia to save his job. I think the score is 24-20 Kentucky. I'm going 24-20. Nobody scores more than 20 on Kentucky.
They haven't so far this year. All right, this is the unpopular pick, but I'm going to make it because I've been picking against the Cats all year long. I started early in the season, and it's worked every week except for the A&M game, but that's an overtime game. That's a fluke. So not my hope, not my wish. I'm just going to make this prediction. Georgia is averaging 38 points per game. They put a lot of points on the board. So I think Kentucky's defense holds them under that. I said 27-17 Georgia. But that's just because I haven't seen much from the Kentucky offense lately. They're going to have to put points on the board. So, like I said, not my hope, but right now I have a 10-point favorite for Georgia.
He's following the Vegas odds. Vegas 10-point favorite, over under 44. He just went 27-17.
I hope I can say I'm wrong.
Just saying. All right, tonight, let's talk about basketball for a quick second. John Calipari and the Cats will have their final exhibition before they meet up with that team next Tuesday, the Duke Blue Devils. I think you've heard of them. That's the season opener in Indianapolis.
Yeah, one of the biggest areas of emphasis for Cal is always on defense, especially for his younger teams. And last week against Transy, the Pioneers had 26 straight line drives to the basket on a much taller Wildcats team. So UK's been talking about that subject since that Bahamas trip.
It's been, addressed every single day, since last Friday. So I think, that's something that we want to see an improvement on defense, once again, individually as well as collectively, is you got to keep the ball in front. But yeah, when you play teams like Transylvania, we did have some matchups, there at the 3, 4, and 5 that were unique to probably that one game.
Now, I cut off that soundbite a couple of days ago when Joel Justice talked about that one game. He also went on to say, well, it's something you also may see later in the year. Mm-hmm. That means a 1 versus a 16 seed, if you know what I mean. Because Transy is a D3, very good program in Division III basketball. Brian Lane's teams are always highly competitive. They're gritty, they're gutty, and all that. But obviously their tallest guy is 6'7", 6'8" maybe. Kentucky's got trees in the paint, and they've got muscles where Transy guys don't have muscles, and they're just they're that much bigger and stronger.
They don't have muscles.
Well, Bo Shue took a charge, and he goes, "No, I didn't flop. They're just physically that much stronger than me." Okay. He said that during the game. But Kentucky is going to face teams that are like this, a gimmicky team like Transy. Like, we can take the first shot. We got to get to the bat, do whatever we can. When you've got this much talent for Kentucky, teams are going to have to get into a bag of tricks to beat them.
So tonight they've got IUP
Indiana
University, Pennsylvania.
Of Pennsylvania.
Of Pennsylvania, not IUPUI. That's a different
That's right.
school. This is IUP, a Division II school that won their conference last year. Actually, a top 25 team in Division II. So a decent team in the Division II level. But of course, Kentucky should have no problem with them. Are they the Red Hawks?
They're the Crimson Hawks.
Crimson Hawks. There you go.
Close enough.
Close enough.
We got the same
7
colors,
o'clock. Rupp Arena, of course, though, this is just a tune-up game for the big game next Tuesday.
He'll be in there. That's election night. So on election night, we've got all the poll results coming in, and you'll know who this candidate won or lost. And then you get ready. That's just the popcorn for UK and Duke.
Yeah.
That game's going to be a 9:30 tip, something like that, next Tuesday. So we appreciate you joining in on the Facebook Live for Friday. Huge game tomorrow, huge game tonight, the final exhibition for basketball, and so it's going to be a great weekend. Hope you enjoy it. See you.
See you later.